Nihanyang, hello, I am the Dark Fae, and welcome back to Confessions of a First-Time Dungeon Master. As always, if you missed the last session, I'll put a link to it up in the corner for you over here. You can go check it out, catch up on what you missed, and then come back here to find out what happened next. We are now in session 51, so let us begin! Alright, so the last session we left off with our party kind of venturing into the caves as a sign of, yes, this is what we are going to do next. So I drew them like a quick little sketch of a map of what they had sort of seen in terms of like potential pathways versus the pathway that they actually took. And they decided that instead of continuing to the cavern this time, they were going to stop one fork kind of before that and try a different route. So they decide to turn left. The map that I designed for this cavern is a much more complicated map than I have maybe designed in the past, since this one takes into account like height as well as like direction and depth. So this particular path that they take, which is a more direct path, which is a good thing, takes them kind of deeper into this like ice wall that they are kind of inside of, and eventually leads to another fork, one that seems to slope very sharply downwards, and one that kind of just branches off to the left. With Basil's kind of tingle check, he surmises that it's probably best to move forward and down, because the pull is kind of has been leading them in a downward direction for much of this time. So this, they send Beverin's familiar forward, since familiars are very useful for scouting, and it is able to tell them that this slope is kind of a long steep tunnel that sort of descends rapidly, kind of mellows out at the end and opens up into a much larger chamber. And in this large chamber there is sort of a 50-foot diameter pit kind of in the middle of it. So they start making their way, but before that happens, as they are approaching the two in the front, Imric and Beverin, they are ambushed by a couple of creatures that descend from above and latch themselves onto their heads. So these are kind of modified cloakers that I adapted a little bit to fit kind of into an Arctic climate. And so they roll initiative and a battle ensues. So they quickly learn that damaging the cloakers while they are attached to a person will kind of transfer half of the damage to the person. So luckily Tyrell is able to pull the first cloaker of Imric kind of on the first turn, and they're able to very quickly wear it down with a blight and a pretty nasty, I believe, inflict wounds from Imric. The other one, however, stays attached to Beverin's head for quite some time, so Beverin ends up getting pretty low before Ivar Tyrell kind of help pry it off. So then at this point, with them kind of surrounded, the party make decently short work of it. The wounded villain does reattach to Imric at one point, but they're able to pull it off again with some good athletics checks. So some of the party a little bit hurt, a little bit. They then decide to descend down into this kind of slope. I have found out now that my party's like bane is any like athletic-y kind of feat in D&D, especially climbing. They do have a rope of climbing, but it only helps so much in a like 200-foot tunnel or so. So they come up with this way of kind of having one person secure the rope with pitons, whatever. I'm pretty sure it's piton. I looked it up before, I think, in a video, and kind of anchoring the rope down getting to a certain point, and then they take another rope, anchor it in, and keep on going. With this, there's a few instances. I still have them roll some athletics checks to see how they are climbing down, since this is a very slick, very steep, kind of icy slope. A few of them have a few kind of heart-stopping moments where they slip or one of the pitons comes out and they almost lose their grip, but luckily they all manage to like make it down to at least halfway of this tunnel before Umric, I think he might have rolled a natural one or something very low, and eventually just slips and kind of careens out of view. Have them roll like a dexterity check to see if he can kind of avoid some of the stalagmites or like and the icy kind of icicles that are kind of in this chamber. He does attempt to kind of glissade a little bit with Warhammer to kind of try and control the descent, but he's not able to very well with his roll, and then he kind of shoots out the end, lands, drops about 20 feet, so they do take a little bit damage, but he is out. So eventually they all kind of get tired of climbing, I think, and follow suit. Umric takes Puck on a shield and kind of glides out. Luckily, the pit is far enough away that they do not skid and like fall over the edge. And then Basil goes, Tyrell goes, Bevern is last, who's a little bit more careful and has left a few pitons kind of stuck into the tunnel so that they can climb their way up, hopefully, with more ease going forward. So eventually they all make it down to this large cavern. In this cavern, about 80 feet tall, probably about like 100 or so feet in diameter. There's a 50-foot pit kind of in the middle of it. And there's actually another tunnel that's kind of up near the ceiling, near the back of the left. Yeah, near the back left wall. That looks like another potential tunnel that they could have discovered to get here. So they take a short rest, keeping an ear out for any potential creatures or anything that might have noticed their presence, but seems pretty quiet this far down. They also go to inspect the pit, and so this pit is very large, very deep, and it's also full of icy spikes that are just protruding every which way. Like, imagine a pile of needles if the needles were large icicles, making it very sharp and pointy and jagged that kind of stick out which way. So descending into this pit would be a difficult feat in and of itself, to just kind of like find a space for a medium creature to fit, not to mention shredding yourself kind of on the ice bags as you go. So Bevern does send their bat down. Is a tiny creature. It is luckily able to kind of squeeze into the gaps. It rolls a high enough dexterity where it doesn't accidentally like impale itself on an ice spike, because it is a bat and their like flight patterns are a little bit like erratic as they flutter. It kind of is able to navigate downwards. It's about a 120-foot pit of spikes. Although it's not really a pit because it is open at the bottom, and it actually opens up into another large chamber, the floor of which is about 60 feet down. And the bat rolls a natural 1 on perception, but what it can see with its blind sense is it's just a large kind of enclosed chamber with some ice spires and stalagmites kind of sticking out of the ground, as well as hanging icicles from the ceiling. There appears to be some sort of a pit or a ring of some, I don't know if it notices that there's a moat of spikes kind of in the center, and on a platform of ice, there appears to be something almost block-like or like statue-like, figure-like, kind of there, but it does not get a good enough view, and then it actually is attacked by some unknown force, and it poofs out of existence. So, with that, then, after some scouting and mapping out a little bit of what there is, we ended the session there so that they can plan a little bit on how they're going to get down this pit of spikes. And like as a DM, even I tried to design encounters or like new situations for them so that they have like, you know, different things to figure out or different kind of abilities that they can use to see what they can do. So I would say that when I design things, I don't necessarily like look at their abilities and take into account what they do, because that way I think that avoids me designing an encounter with only like one specific solution. So, but after the session, a couple of the players were like, there's no way we can do this. Like, how are we going to do it? So I went in and looked at their abilities. I was like, no, you guys can totally do it. You're fine. So like as a DM, like a few like ideas that come to mind, like if you can find something adequately heavy or large and drop it down the pit and smash some of the spikes down, that can kind of create a passage for them to climb or fall downwards. If they decide to fall downwards, teleportation is the thing that kind of negates momentum. If they're clever about it, they could just fall down, reach the bottom safely. If they have a way to kind of reduce the amount of slashing, piercing, or bludgeoning damage, that they could honestly just drop down and see if they survive the fall. Although it's I made the fall high on purpose so that it seems like it is much more of a hazard than just like, oh, a 20-foot drop, we can just do it. So this requires a little bit of problem solving. But yeah, so teleportation, dropping something heavy, even like, I don't know, like there's some spells that work, like Dimension Door or like Thunder Wave to break off spikes or something like that. So it's kind of something designed to, not necessarily to kill them, but it can certainly be deadly if they decide not to do anything about it, but more so that it potentially uses some of their spell resources or their ability resources and gets them thinking a little bit on how to approach this, because although I guess they don't technically know, at the bottom of this is the orb chamber. Orbs are designed... Just realize how weird that is to say that they're designed so that, because I'm the one who designed it, but like, I'm thinking of, Wistria made these so that, that they're supposed to be difficult to find and difficult to get to. Like, people aren't supposed to just go in and destroy them willy-nilly. So, there's a reason that there are such good defenses around these things. If they were easy to find, they probably would have been destroyed already. Or there would be a lot more dead bodies where they are. So, I'll be interested to see what they come up with, and whether or not they take the hazard of this seriously. Because I think at this point, Basil and even Avar a little bit are pretty sure that they need to go down this way, just given like the imagery of their dream and kind of the pull from the ring is kind of taking them like downwards toward the pit, not actually like trying to pull them into the pit, but they are getting the sense that the direction they want to go is down directly. So that is session 51. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for notifications when I put out new videos. Love you all, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!